Looking for inspiration, peace, and a deeper connection with your soul? If you're ready to investigate your higher truth, take a deeper look inside, and discover a better way to live, stay tuned for Higher Soul Living, where we ignite your divine intelligence for life. With me, Reverend Christine Hart-Savage. I experienced a profound spiritual awakening that was so life-changing. It took me into a 30-year career as a metaphysical life coach and breathwork expert. I've mentored thousands of people through their personal challenges, anxiety, self-doubt, and search for meaning. Higher Soul Living is about choosing to live the higher way. It's about taking conscious ownership and drawing spiritual intelligence into your everyday life. Join me on a search for higher truth to find hope, connection, and happiness. The Higher Soul Living Show starts now. Welcome, everybody. This is Reverend Christine Hart-Savage. Welcome to the show. This is the Higher Soul Living Show, where you ignite your divine intelligence for life. I'm looking a bit windblown. I think I've just come back from a beach walk this morning. I live in Hampton, which is a bayside suburb in Melbourne, Australia, and it is just beautiful where I live, so I feel very blessed. Most mornings I head out for a beach walk and then a coffee before I come back and start work, so it's really great. So I hope your day is going well for you. Today, I thought we'd speak about a favourite sort of topic that I like, called the secret in the cells. Now, what I want to really sort of get into today is, does your body hold spiritual information? Does it hold something that could help you understand and navigate your life? It's a really interesting topic, and they're things that I think most of us are searching for something, just something in our lives that to help us with life. Like, what's it about? Because it's not an easy journey. We sort of come into this life and we're a bit blind about how to work it. So at first, when we're very young, we tend to look to our parents and think that they have all the answers for everything, as I did growing up. But of course they don't, and none of us do. So this is what's really exciting about soul work and metaphysics. I love metaphysical science because it's really put a lot of the answers together for me. It's great. And I think I feel like I've learned so much. I know so much more these days, but I know such a tiny bit of this vast universe. There's so much to learn. So today we're going to touch on the secret in the cells. And, you know, this is an absolutely massive topic. It's so massive. So we're only going to be touching the surface today. So one area of this I'd like to sort of head into is the emotional and the spiritual secrets that reside deep in the cellular level of the body. And this part is really, it's truly where the metaphysical meets the physical aspect of the self. So can we really learn to read and to navigate life by what it is showing us inside our body and reflecting in our external world, because the world reflects back to us where we are. So can we start living in a more responsible, powerful, and happy way? So it's an exciting search. And often discovery leads us to this higher way of living, because it certainly has for me. So do the cells hold memory? Now, I believe the cells do hold memory. And the reason I say that is because the longer I've worked in this industry, the more I get to see this as an example. So in my own journey, when I went through this really quite a major breakdown many years ago, so 30 odd years ago, I started to understand so much more about life and about myself and how I got myself into the situation I did. Two of the ways that I went through this, or got to this understanding through many years, mind you, was through breath work and through meditation. And what I really started to experience and be shown was how the body consciousness, which is really separate but still joined, sort of amalgamated with the soul energy. So what I found is that we could start meditating and doing that spiritual work, which I was doing every single day of my life. It was like my breath. It was my savior. Now, what I also found is that the more expanded and the more aware I became, the more energy poured into me, that brought up what was unresolved from my past. Now, where does that sit? How can that happen? And I thought about that a lot because as I was doing breath work, I would experience in my physical body different emotional charges, different memories that would come up that were really, some of them, very, very charged with emotion, and thought processes that were attached to that emotion. So the body must hold everything inside it. It's like every moment of our life, the body is recording our thoughts, our feelings. It's recording our actions. It's recording what we perceive as happening to us. So triggers and emotions are something I'd like to also talk about, because often we tend to blame other people because we have been triggered by what they have done or what they've said. And it certainly feels like that, I must admit. It feels very real when someone has done something to us. That's our perception, they have done to us, that we blame them for the way that we feel and the way that we respond to that. But triggers are different to emotional charge. So triggers are something that is usually outside of us. But it could be a thought of our own that we're having that also is a trigger. But I'm going to speak about it a little bit differently. Like the trigger comes from something outside of us, like it's external. It could be something somebody does. It could be something they say that suddenly we feel this incredible emotion come up. But that emotion, that emotional charge is inside us. So they're two different things. The trigger does not belong to us. It is something that creates the charge to come up. If we've got an emotional wound inside us, that is what comes up when it's triggered. So whatever the level of emotional charge is on that, you will feel that. And it's very real, like it feels very, very real when it's coming up. But it's usually, or it always, not to do with current reality. It's been sitting down there. It's sort of asleep inside us. It's what I like to call shadows that sit over the soul. They're like barnacles. You know, on the bottom of a boat, they have those barnacles that they have to clean off all the time. Well, our past shadows that are charged with emotion through the experiences we've had in our lives. So when something happens to us, we interpret it a certain way. We have thoughts about it, and those thoughts produce an emotion. And if it's a really strong emotion, that gets stuck at the cellular level of the body. And it takes up life force, like it literally is using life force. It's like it sort of looks like a shadow. And then when we really start attracting more of that same type of energy, it starts to solidify even more. So it gets quite thick. And eventually it looks like tar It can be runny tar. And eventually, if we don't clear this shadow stuff, these barnacles out of the cellular level of the body, it gets really hard like tar. And usually that's when we've got a diagnosis of something that is quite serious when it gets to that level. But the good thing is that we can actually start to work with this energy that is blocked. There's sort of past wounds. There's many words that we could use to describe it. Could even do it in reverse and say a part of the soul jumps out of the body and we have to bring it back in. But I work with it a bit differently to that. I tend to describe it as it gets gummed up, the energy that flows, the pure energy that flows through us, that is our life force that we use to live every day. We use it to think, to feel, to act. We make choices. This energy is very powerful. Without that, we just can't exist. We wouldn't be alive. So what happens when we become attached to something and something happens to us and we have a thought process about it, our perception, and we have an emotional charge, the energy becomes gooey because we're imprinting it with an emotion. And it really is the emotion that causes the problem for us. And I'm sure you've all experienced this when you're out somewhere where, you could be out anywhere for that matter, or you could be at home with your family. Home's a big one. Families are a big one, particularly parents or siblings or in-laws, and you get triggered. And suddenly this emotion comes up and you feel either frustrated or angry or embarrassed or whatever the flavor is that you have on this emotion. And it can feel at times, if it's a really strong wound, it can feel like it completely takes you over and you lose yourself. And I'm sure that everybody either watching or listening right now has had that experience. Now that is a pattern. That is an unresolved emotional trauma from the past. And we know that it's a shadow that's still sitting at the cellular level of the body. We know that because if it wasn't, you wouldn't have that experience of that emotion coming up. But because you feel that, and you'll feel it in your gut, you'll feel it in your solar plexus area, and it could move to other parts of the body as well, but you will initially feel it in that solar plexus, that gut area, the high stomach area. So that's our emotional center, and that's where we feel these things. So when you have any sort of emotion surfacing like that and you feel it, know that that is coming from the past. But it's being triggered in present time. But it doesn't mean it's actually part of the present reality. And that's where the issues happen with us being human beings. Because if people have a lot of wounds inside them, I did, and I'm sure that most of us listening, we all have them, but the level of them sometimes differs. Sometimes people have really, really big past wounds or shadows that they need to deal with, and that can be really tough. So when we're working through these types of things within us, because it takes courage, it takes real courage to actually, what I call, stand up inside ourselves, turn around and face our past. When we do that, it takes enormous courage, but it's worth it. It can be lumpy, it can be scary, but it really is worth it because we start to purify and release that emotional charge that's inside of us. We become less judgmental. We become calmer, more peaceful, more alive. We have more energy to work with because it's like an upgrade. These types of patterning that is sitting on us, like the barnacles, they're a very low vibrational frequency. They're heavy, they're gooey, and they're energy that is trapped inside us with a memory on it. Now, as we go into the levels of releasing the charge on that pollution, it purifies the energy. Every layer we can release on that, it purifies that bit of energy. So then that makes it usable energy. It transforms that energy into something that we can actually use consciously for our day-to-day life. So working with these patterns is really important. And I wanted to place that particularly today in the area of the cells of the body, because it's an interesting concept, really. The cells of the body, they hold so much information. So if we think about it spiritually, we are using spiritual energy to live by. That's our juice, it's our petrol. Without that energy, we can't survive. So we could call it many things, but for me, it is a spiritual type energy because it is filled with information, universal information, cosmic information, if you like. It's a real thing. It isn't just an energy, even though it's an energy. It has substance. It's a very real thing. And when you start to consciously experience this, you get to understand there is so much to understand. And as we develop and we expand our consciousness, we expand our awareness, which raises our consciousness, we then start to understand life at a different level. You know, I think there's so many layers to understanding. Understanding something, we can understand it at a level, but as we start to experience life and experience different parts of ourselves internally, that understanding deepens. So it's like we have many, many layers of comprehension that we can get to in our understanding. And I don't think that ever stops. I think it's ongoing. The more we know, the more we learn, the more we continue to learn, because I think it just is eternal, that we just keep learning and learning. And that's what's so exciting about life. And when we start to understand the blending of metaphysics and physics, or the spiritual human, and blending that together, I think that's what it's all about. You know, blending that. That's why I love it so much. So the soul energy becomes quite blocked when we have a lot of shadows or barnacles or pollution sitting in the cellular level of the body. But all is not lost because it can be shifted. But often people feel like they're going round and round and round in circles and they're not getting anywhere. Even if they're really trying to do some personal development, working with the mind, which is really great, and working with spirituality, we still have to move these blockages from the cellular level of the body. Because they're heavy and they're vibrating at a low frequency, we've got to release that and raise the cells of the body. We have to release that energy so that it literally, the vibrational frequency raises up, and it creates a new freedom every time it does that. We become more of who we really are. There is a deeper freedom, there's a deeper understanding that starts to happen in that. For those of you that have got the visual at the moment, you're watching the video, there is a picture behind me here that I've got my finger pointing to, and that's another aspect of what happens at the cellular level of the body that is truly amazing. I painted that picture about 25, 30 years ago because I had an experience that I had no idea how to explain, because we just don't have words for that type of experience. So that is the other side to the blockages at the cellular level, Once we start to unblock a lot of those things, there is the most amazing experiences that we can have. Could call them spiritual experiences, but they're really physical as well, because that energy passes into the body and it's vibrating at such a high frequency that you can feel it like electricity, like you've become absolutely electrified in the body, and it buzzes through you, creating this absolute ecstasy. This is probably the closest word that I could use for that. And it's this incredible, radiant, buzzing, vibrating energy that goes through the body. And that energy is part of what I call your soul energy, but you may have a different term for it, because honestly, it's called many different things, and it doesn't really matter what we call it. And in one way, it doesn't matter what our beliefs are either, because as we start to expand in awareness and we heal a lot of things from the past, we have the same type of experiences, whether we're religious, whether we're atheist, whether we call ourselves, spiritual. It doesn't really matter, because all roads lead to Rome. We all start to have the same experience. And that's what I love about this too. So I see a lot of people online and in my clinic. And for the past 30 odd years, what I've noticed is when we start to tap into this well inside the cellular level of the body, it doesn't matter what our beliefs are. Once that layer of emotion shifts, that seems to come up with each session, we end up going to a place of incredible peace, stillness, calm, and we feel very aligned, much more aligned. So what breathing and meditation does for us, sure, it brings up the lumps, it brings up what we have to face in our lives, but it also, once that level, because there's many layers and levels, but once that level integrates, there is universally an experience of calmness, peace, stillness, depth, and I suppose I'd put the word happiness. Some people call it bliss, but there's a happiness, and it's like the mind clears. And even if there's some thoughts there, they're ordered. The emotions, they become very calm. In fact, most people in a breathwork session at the end don't want to come out of it. So we have to draw them out and say, I know you don't feel like coming out now, but it is time to come out. Just start wiggling your fingers and toes, because it's like the deepest possible meditation that you can go into, in a way, where we don't tend to experience this type of peace and calm in our everyday life very often, unless we practice these things daily. But it is a beautiful experience. So really, can we learn to read and navigate what life is showing us and reflecting back to us? Can we learn to work with that and read that and navigate that through understanding the cellular level of the body and what it holds, the brilliant information that it holds, and it does hold incredible information. So can we actually learn to navigate our lives through that? And can we start living a more responsible life, a powerful and happy life? I believe we can. It's certainly been my experience personally, and 30 years clinical, working with clients clinically has shown me that we can really start to live in a more responsible and powerful and a happier way. And often when I use that word responsible or responsibility, people say, oh no, they don't like that word because it can feel really heavy, responsibility, but it's actually not. once you really understand and comprehend this information, it leads to freedom. The freedom to experiment and create a new way of being. If you start experimenting with yourself, with your mind, with your emotions, with your breathing, with meditating, and think, right, this energy that's pouring through me from life, I can learn to direct it, to guide it, to use it in a different way. That's being responsible. And that type of responsibility leads to incredible freedom. So if something happens to us, we can look at it differently. We can choose to be different with our emotions once we learn to actually work with emotions, because at first they can be so strong, they still take us over. And I'm working with a few clients that are doing this. I'm taking them through reading their energy at the moment and how to work with it. And yeah, it's like a bucking bronco, it comes up, and they practice a thing called bow, which I teach in How to Give a Shift. It's a program that I run online, which actually was starting in late February. So it's teaching people about that cellular level, and it's teaching them how to work with it and get through it. But the freedom that comes from that is fantastic. But it means that, we have to go through the lumps, and we have to be so strong with our mind and our focus to work with that stuff. But you start to see how you can do that. You start to see that the power is coming through. Goodness me, we're nearly out of time. Boy, can I talk. So what I'd really like to leave you with today, let's think, sort of some final words. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that we have the opportunity to move our lives in the direction of our choice. Sure, it won't be perfect. It takes experimenting. It takes experimenting and creating. But I find that 100%, people want to live a good life, and we're all looking for a higher way to live. And it's great, and it's ongoing. So I think the main problem for people is not knowing how to do that. And I know it was one of my problems for a long time. So we need to know how to make these changes in life. So to understand that there is a way out. That's why I produced that program, How to Give a Shift, which teaches people. That's on my website, Soul Life Connection, soulLifeConnection.com, if you want to have a look at that. But if you're struggling with things, just know that there is a way out. The body holds many secrets in the cells, and I've only touched on the surface here, so I'll be talking a lot more about this. It's a very exciting area. There's always so much to learn, and it's like food for thought at the moment. So we're out of time. So I wish you a great 2 weeks, and I look forward to chatting with you again. So until then, may life sprinkle you with many blessings. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Higher Soul Living, where you'll ignite your divine intelligence for life with me, Reverend Christine Hart-Savage. Join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more information and stories that inspire hope, possibilities, and a greater understanding of who you are at a higher soul level. Together we deepen the connection between the spiritual and the physical aspects of your being and align to your soul's innate intelligence. Metaphysics and the higher soul's journey are my greatest joy. I invite you to join our Facebook community, Soul Life Connection Group, and to visit my website, SoulLifeConnection.com, for more information about me, my programs, my coaching, and to tap into your higher soul's intelligence. I hope to see you next time.